Hello, 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 and welcome to Cass Loves Tech. Today's video is covering a legal jam session that I had on February 2nd with Confido Legal co-founder Emery Wager. And in the jam session, we had the opportunity to discuss standard operating procedures for law firms and how these procedures could potentially help the firm build and scale their practice. And to take it a step further, we even covered case management systems and how these case management systems could implement some basic administrative tasks that are developed in your standard operating procedures. So let's not waste any more time discussing it. Let's jump right into the jam session.
All right. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to another edition of our Friday Legal Case Management Jam Sessions Live. My name is Emery Wager. I'm one of the co-founders of Confido Legal. We're an embedded payments platform specifically designed for law firms and for legal technology companies. And every Friday, we talk about a hot topic in the world of legal case management software. And this week, I have the pleasure of speaking with Casita Simpson again. Casita is the founder of Simpson Associates, and she and her team help law firms set up their CRM systems, case management systems, and other technology, and also provides outsourced paralegal support. So she is an expert in setting up technology for law firms. She's been in the trenches helping diffuse all sorts of, ugly client situations. So she's seen it all, and I'm really excited to learn from her today. So last week we talked about how to improve communication through your case management software. And in one of the kind of subtopics that came up was building, how do you really develop and build standard operating procedures or SOPs into your firm and use the software to actually kind of embed those processes and get adoption for those processes in the day-to-day so they're actually used. And Casita is an expert in this area. As I mentioned, she's helped lots of firms in this area. So like I said, excited to learn from her today, and I'll turn it over to her for a little intro and then we'll dive in.
Hello again, and so happy to be here. And thank you for that warm introduction. As Emery said, I'm Casita Simpson. I am the proud owner of Simpson and Associates LLC, and we really work very hard to ensure that we're helping the legal community work with technology and use it to the best of their ability to make their lives and the lives of the staff better. Usually that consists of looking through your standard operating procedures and then identifying ways to make the system work best for you. And today we're going to be focusing on standard operating procedures and what that looks like and how you can get started with that stuff. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm glad that we're able to continue on this conversation and pick it right back up where we left off from last week. If you haven't had a chance to check out the last week's jam session, please go ahead and look at it. This live will make a lot more sense once you've had a chance to see that, because they kind of play on each other.
Yeah, awesome. So I want to turn this question to you about kind of like what's at stake here. But before I do that, I'm going to interject kind of like my own personal answer to this question. Obviously, we're not a law firm. We work with many law firms, but one of the things I think of a lot just personally when it comes to SOPs is when I'm doing something that maybe is not kind of in my zone of genius and I don't enjoy it necessarily, but I have this thought that no one else can do it like I can do it. And I'd say before the last year, I would just kind of grit and bear it and go through and kind of keep going with that mindset. But over the last year, myself and other folks at the company have been really focused on trying to get, when we feel that sort of mindset, trying to build an SOP and trying to document it and try to get adoption for it so that I'm not the kind of the tribal knowledge bottleneck, or someone else at the company is not the tribal knowledge bottleneck. And if we have an SOP that's well documented, it's so liberating and so freeing, because you know that, hey, maybe it won't be done, exactly 100% the way I would have done it, but it's going to get done. And in many cases, it's going to get done better because it's going to be completed by someone where that is their kind of zone of genius. Mm-hmm. So I know there's a lot of law firms out there, a lot of lawyers, a lot of solos, a lot of managing partners who probably feel that way in certain circumstances. And so I just wanted to inject my little bit of experience before I turn it over to you, Casita. So with that, like, what's at stake here? I mean, you've been in the trenches, you've seen this. What's at stake?
I would say a lot's at stake. And before I even talk about what's at stake, I would say that definitely a lot of people think like you, like in terms of wanting to do it themselves and trying to just struggle through and do it on their own because it's just easier. But what you said makes valid sense. If someone else is doing it and you're not, they're able to maybe think about it with a little bit different of a lens than you would, because they're doing it and you're not. And oftentimes it's done better, but really at the end of the day, you get to the same goal. And really the goal is to get the thing accomplished, get it done, get it completed. And so it doesn't necessarily matter who or what's doing it. It's just a matter of, is this achieving a goal? And if it is, and it looks proper and it's not, we're not sending out garbage coming out of our companies and things, I think that we've met that goal. Mm-hmm. And so, the reason why there's a lot at stake is because without an SOP, you don't have a blueprint, you don't have a roadmap. No one has a guide or anything to be able to say, okay, well, when this happens, we do this. There's no logic to it. And so it's a recipe for disaster. Starting out, you can get by without having it. But the moment that you start to have employees working for you, or you're, outsourcing contractors to assist you, then you start to realize how problematic it is to not have certain things in place. When it's just you, it makes sense. But when it's just you and you're like, man, like, how would I even articulate this to somebody else? Write it down. If you can't write it down, create a video. And then from that video, most platforms, when you have the video created, it gives you transcript as well. I know Loom does. So you can take the transcript and then strip it and utilize that to start building out your SOPs. I mean, it really just starts from the beginning. And if you're doing it in the beginning, then it just makes it easier to modify and adapt and update as you're growing, as your practice is growing. It grows with you, alongside you. But if you don't have it in place, what happens when you want to start to scale? Because that's usually when you notice it the most. And then you're like kicking yourself as to, man, why didn't I do this sooner? Just create a video. It's not hard. You don't have to, no one's asking you to be a wordsmith, and like write out all of these things. Create a video, strip that transcript, build out those things, those common things. And then if it's easy for you to take screenshots from the video that you created, do that. Start off simple, but don't make it harder than what it needs to be. Just start somewhere. There's a lot at stake.
I love the video method, by the way. We use it heavily, and you're right there. I mean, there's so many great transcription tools out there, and with tools like ChatGPT, it can take a transcript and turn it into an SOP like that. And there are also companies where you can just ship them a video, and they will kind of build out the SOP in a really nice format for a really affordable rate. So yeah, I think a lot of people think that they have to sit down and create this like beautiful written SOP. And I think if you're doing that, probably no one's going to look at it.
Right. And that's true. But you know what? If you want to make it pretty later. Let's just get the basics on paper. You could always make it pretty at any point. Like you could even outsource it. Like you said, there's so many resources that you can utilize to make it pretty later. Let's just make sure the foundational items are there. And if we're focused on making it pretty, how are we ensuring that the meat is there? How are we ensuring that all the things that the people need to know are there when your focus is on how beautiful or aesthetically pleasing this document looks? It doesn't have to be that way.
All right. So let's say we've got, you, just to back up, you told this great story last week about, an angry client calling in, and there was, they wanted to speak to the attorney who was not available. And so you got put on the phone with this client and hopped right into the case management system. And because there was a good feed of, what was going on in the case, you were able to kind of diffuse that situation, demonstrating a knowledge of the matter at hand. And one of the things that was in there was case notes. And so this is how we kind of got to the SOP topic, is having a SOP about case notes and when to make those notes, so that you can be in this situation and anyone can help diffuse, kind of a rough client situation. So obviously, having a policy or a procedure around case notes would seem to me to be a very important one. How would you talk to the firm that maybe doesn't have any SOPs written down or in video form, or anywhere else but folks' heads? How do they prioritize? Like, what comes first in that situation? Is it always case notes, or what's most important?
In my opinion, and I know I touched on this last week too, so I'm gonna say it again. I don't care. The client is the starting point, right? So, what do you want to happen as a part of the initial process when you're screening prospective clients? When prospective clients call in and they're trying to retain your firm for services, what does that look like? Because that's where it starts. All you can we start with saying, okay, what process do we want in place? Then it's like, okay, well, in addition to that, or simultaneously with that, are we performing a conflict check? Is that something that's a part of your system? If you have a CRM, okay, make sure your CRM is performing the conflict check. And so you're building this out in your SOP as you're doing it. If you don't have a CRM at this time, that's completely fine too. You just have to have a way to be able to do the conflict check. So if you're utilizing a spreadsheet or a Google Sheet, just do Control Find or Command Find and just make sure that you're performing it. So, the initial client process should also include checking to make sure that there are no conflicts, ensuring that what happens when intake is necessary, right? So a client comes in, they communicate with someone, maybe you, maybe it's someone else. It depends on how your system's going. And then, okay, what happens from there? You would check to make sure that there's no conflict. And then you would do the very next thing, which is, okay, well, how are we going to intake this information? Like, are we doing it on paper? Is your system doing it electronically? Does your system have a call log where you can enter in the call log to ensure that all the beginning intake information is there? Do you have an intake process with an intake form that screens with certain questions? If you do have an intake form, is that a paper form? And what in a perfect world would you want to happen with this paper form? These are all processes that have to be mapped out so that procedures can be put in place. Like, this is like literally the small bucket where it starts. And then you take it piece by piece from there. But your prospective client should be where you start, because that's how they get in contact and engaged. So even if I'm going to be just a little bit granular, all right, so they're coming in, but what methods are they coming in from? Because if they're coming in by phone, and meaning they're going to speak to you, or maybe you have a virtual receptionist, you need to identify what that process is going to be like from that call. If they're coming in from your website because you have a website in place, all right, cool. What's the process that has to take place once they've engaged from the website? They completed the contact form. What happens right after that? Take it piece by piece, because it's a big project. There's a lot of components to it. But if you take it piece by piece, you'll be really surprised how quickly you have a finished product, because you know what you ideally want your process to be like for your firm. You have that idea already. You wouldn't have gotten into business if you didn't kind of have an idea of what you wanted certain things to look like. So now it's just time to just put things on paper and just make sure that you're identifying it in a way that's like easy to digest for you and easy for someone else to just come in and hit the ground running. Yeah.
So I love the idea of like starting with the client experience there. Talk to the person who's maybe listening and overwhelmed right now. Like, where can they start?
Overwhelmed. Okay, so when I'm hearing someone say that they're overwhelmed, I'm thinking, okay, well, what's causing us to be overwhelmed in this moment, right? Is it that you're dealing with prospects and that's overwhelming you because you're not able to reach them? Or is it that you're now in matter world and you have like a plethora of matters that you're expected to do next steps on and you're trying to figure that out. In both instances, it's going to come down to what would be the first step that you would take naturally to get out of this overwhelming situation. And
Yeah.
what I would do is have a list of what the cases are, and then maybe have like a priority of what order it will go in. And even that could become a process, a SOP. Like, because as you're identifying what's causing you to be overwhelmed, if it's actually onslaught of a bunch of matters, okay, that's fine. But how would you like the next person that's bogged down with this caseload to be able to move into the next thing? I think the first thing would be to identify, because in our heads, everything is overwhelming. Everything is like jammed up there. But you'll be surprised once you start writing things down on paper, you're able to say, man, this is really not as bad as I thought it would be. The countless times I'm thinking I have a long list of to-dos, and there are a long list of to-dos. That's natural. But once you put it on paper, you're able to prioritize, right? So what do you want your operating procedure to be in terms of like prioritizing? Would you want them to prioritize the case that's been like standing around the longest, or would you want them to prioritize the new person that just came in because you're able to keep that person happy? And then maybe you, being the attorney, would be the one responsible for the cases that are aged, that are older. So dividing and conquering is also an option too. And that could also be put into your procedure. So when we reach X caseload, we need to do X. When we reach here, we need to do this. And that in itself could dissipate that overwhelming feeling, because you know that you have a process to be able to navigate and delegate different things to. The more, I won't say you need to be so particular that you're not giving people the room to like try to do things the way that they need to, but the more information you're able to outline in terms of like what's to be expected working with your firm, the better it is for you. Because the easiest thing to do when you're feeling overwhelmed is to phone a friend, ask for a lifeline. That's like the very next thing that makes sense to do. But once you do that, what do you give them? What do they have? How do they help you? They can't help you if they don't know anything about your firm. And the best way to do that is by having these procedures, so you're able to say, here's a blueprint on how you can help me today. And anyone could just slip in and be able to assist with some administrative stuff, because that's usually the thing that causes overwhelming. It's like, I have this long list of administrative things to do, and I have these legal things that need to be done. So which one do I prioritize? And how do I go about that? But if you can delegate something or offload something to someone else, if you're using a virtual receptionist and we're talking about leads, maybe having them reach out to the leads. And by having that SOP in place of what happens between these different steps, if the client says this or the prospect says this, you say this. If the client wants to schedule something, you give them this link. Give them the procedures to be able to help you. Yeah.
Awesome. Also, kind of what I'm hearing is if you're looking for a place to start, maybe try to find the, where does the client experience and your feeling of being overwhelmed intersect? And you mentioned a few places where that happens, but that could be a great place to start with building out these SOPs, and then just kind of checking them off in kind of priority order from there. Let's talk a little bit about, like, maybe we can get like really tactical for a second. Let's talk about, and you talked about kind of like the video method, which I personally love. It's very easy, but like, where should these things, like, where should they live? And how do we put them in a place where people will kind of see them and adopt them? Like, what have you seen out there?
I've seen a lot of different kinds of ways it being done. I want to take a moment and talk about the firms that don't have a CRM yet. If you don't have a CRM yet, you can start by having maybe a Google document that starts with the thumbnail, with the video that they can watch. And then maybe it has like a list of things that they would need to do after watching the video to kind of get a better understanding of certain things. They do have, Google Docs is one option, but there's so many, like if you're, so if you're not ready to use a CRM like a Locus or anything like that, and you start off with something maybe like an Asana that's really cost effective, you can have your videos embedded in there. And once the videos are embedded, you're able to just tell your team to go and watch it there. If you have a way to manage your site, and let's say you created like a page that's not published to the public and you had all of your videos there, they could watch them there. YouTube, you can create a YouTube academy and have all of your videos there where they can just go there and watch the videos and be able to do certain things. So there are
Mhm.
free options available. So I definitely don't want to stress a CRM if you're not ready for it yet. I know that there's sometimes budgetary constraints with doing that, but there are options. YouTube is an option. Create a dedicated page on your website, make it private, put it there. They can log in there and watch them there. You can have them in a Google Doc if you're on the Google Workspace. If you're using Microsoft, you can have a dedicated place within Microsoft where they live. If you're a Microsoft user, you can have them in Teams. You could
Mhm.
literally create a section in Teams in the channel where all the videos live, and that you can have them embedded there where you say, hey, go watch this video to be able to know how to do this. If you're using Loom and you're paying for Loom, even better, because Loom has a way of allowing you to have different workspaces within it. So if, for example, you have just like legal drafting type of videos, you can literally have a separate section just for that, and all the videos will be there, and you can give access to people with a password only to watch those videos. So you do have options available in a free or low cost um, method. If you're using a CRM, I would put them in the CRM for sure. I would make sure that you have a dedicated place. If it's something that is like generic and it doesn't apply to a specific matter, then I would have it be on like the dashboard. Different systems allow you to do something a little bit different. But for example, if you're using My Case, for example, there is a way that you can have it on the main page of My Case to be able to have them click on that link and be able to watch that video. The same thing with, honestly, all of them. Locus, there's a way that you can put them inside of Locus. Now, for Locus, you would probably have to put it under like a matter area as opposed to on the dashboard, just so that it's easily accessible. But there are options. Yeah, I would definitely make sure you put it in your system if you
Mhm.
have the ability to do that. And it also depends on the kind of videos too. So if they're informational how-to videos and it's specific to maybe converting a lead to a matter, or maybe it's like the life cycle of a lead, you
Mhm.
want to make sure that that's in the CRM. But if you're saying that like, oh, I want you to know how to e-file or something, for example, maybe you put that somewhere else. So it really just depends on what kind of video it is and how important that particular SOP is to be like top of mind, front and center.
Mhm. Got it. Got it. So just to kind of recap, we talked about sort of how do you get started, where to prioritize that kind of first SOP. We talked about just pick a place, and you outlined many different places where that could go. Those are all great options. So here's how to prioritize, pick a place. Let's talk a little bit about kind of like adoption, because I think one fear that I think is very real is, hey, we create all these SOPs and we found a place for them. We put them there. It's in a system where everybody has access. But how do I make sure people actually, adopt them and follow those? Like what works in those situations?
When it comes to adopting, I have found that when you're going to assign, now I'm speaking to the firms that have teams right now. So when you have a team of people, and let's say that you know that you need to assign this particular task, if you're automating this task, you would just link to the video and just say, please remember to check out this video to be able to understand the process of how to do this. And every single time someone is asking a question and there's a video that already answers it, navigate them to the video. It's not to be rude, but it's empowering them to find it for themselves, because that's what you want. You don't want to be bogged down with questions that is literally in a video or in a SOP that they can just go back and look at. I've seen it happen so many times.
It
I've
is so
personally,
tempting, so
I know,
tempting.
I know, I've experienced it myself, so I know. And it's like, I'm not trying to be rude, or be disrespectful, but how do you learn if I just keep giving you the answers? Let's go ahead and make sure that you watch this video and take adequate notes. That's the whole
Mhm.
point in having the video, so that you can take the notes that you want to make sure that you're able to go and do this, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole point. So if you're giving a task, you're assigning a duty for someone, it's a project or something like that, give them the link to the video that you already created and have them watch it so that they know what that SOP is and what is the goal at the end from beginning to end. And that way
Yeah.
you don't have to spend time answering these questions. And they will come to you and ask you questions still. Let me just put that out there. They will still come to you and try to ask you questions, okay? You just have to tell them, redirect them back to the video. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think in a world of Slack and Teams and instant chat, it's so easy to ask somebody, but you're right. I mean, you'll never make progress if you're fielding those type of things. And what I found is, as if you're the answerer, oftentimes you maybe don't have the whole checklist in your head perfectly. So you're going to answer that question. They're not going to look at the SOP, and then what you're going to get is an inconsistent, result there. So the other thing I would add is it is also a great way to kind of hold people on the team accountable. If something doesn't go wrong, your kind of immediate question is, okay, was this in our SOP? If yes, why did it not get followed? Then it's an adoption issue. If no, we can actually update our SOP and improve and never make that mistake again.
Right.
But if you don't have that, you're just going to kind of start from the same place again and make that mistake again.
Yeah. And one thing to highlight too is that, when you have a team and you have these SOPs in place, you're able to really have an idea of the metrics. Who's meeting the standard, who's falling below the standard, who's exceeding the standard. KPIs are a lot easier to work through when you have an SOP, because that's the starting point, right? So are people following the processes that are put in place? Are they paying attention to detail? Then that comes up in a review, because you have this SOP that you can use as a resource or as a guide to say, okay, it's not everything, but it helps to navigate, okay, well, who's meeting the expectation of our standard operating procedures to make sure things are being done effectively. And then you can kind of have the proper conversations that you need to have, because to your point, if you have the videos there and they're not being followed, and the information's easily accessible, that's an issue on the employee, on the contractor, on the person that you assign to do the thing. And then you'll be having a very different conversation, right? Because it's like, okay, we're not doing what we need to be doing. And it's not like the tools are not there for you to be able to follow along. So what's that issue here?
Yeah. Oh, it makes total sense. We could jam on this topic forever, but we're getting close to time. So kind of to, again, summarize, I'm hearing sort of 4 main steps in this process. One is, here's how to prioritize, look for things at the intersection of, look for potential processes at the intersection of where do I feel overwhelmed and the client experience. And at that intersection, that's where you start, and then keep building from there. Number 2 is pick a place. There's a lot of places that you listed, but pick a place. 3rd is work on getting adoption among your team. And then 4, we need a better name for this, but accountability / continuous improvement would be another one. So that's kind of the framework I'm pulling from you, and I'm going to remember that.
I would say for the last one, it's all about just identifying where we are and then recalibrating as needed, right? Because oftentimes you're calibrating with a specific goal in mind, but as things are, coming out and as different things are presenting themselves as issues, you're able to identify what those issues are, and then not necessarily reinvent the wheel, but fine tune and tweak what you have and recalibrate it to make it make sense. And, based on what all the 4 points that you've identified already that we've been covering, I would really like to stress that if something is overwhelming you, it's important to know why, and it's important to map that out. So that's not an overwhelming thing anymore. I have a lot of brainstorming sessions where I literally just record into my phone and then I put it into Outer AI and I literally have it give me a transcript and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to start working with this. It's okay. You don't have to write it. Like I often find that talking things through, I'm able to get to what my goal is a little bit quicker and I'm able to then turn that into written copy. So like, I know I said this, but just start. And if you're so overwhelmed that you can't even focus on the client experience, then start with that thing that's overwhelming you. And chances are it does intersect with the client experience because at the end of the day, the work that you're doing is to satisfy the client. If there's an issue with getting to the work, why is that the case? You know? And if you can have your system alleviate some of these administrative functions, let's do that. And you can find out exactly what that thing is, if it's administrative or client experience or whatever it is that's overwhelming you. You're able to identify that and then attack how to resolve it and make it not be an issue any further.
Awesome. Well, as we wind down here today and give everybody their Friday back, I will say that at confidolegal.com/LCM for legal case management, we have a database and some tools to help you select the right system, case management system for your firm. And a lot of those systems do have great tools for adding SOPs into the primary system that everyone at your firm is using. So it may not, the case management system may not be right for everybody, but it is a system where the majority of people are most likely operating at the firm. So it can be a great space. So that's confidolegal.com/LCM. And I will turn it over to Casita for any final remarks. And maybe you can tell everyone a little bit about how to find you.
Yes. Final remarks. Don't have an SOP? Please start thinking about it. I hope that this video empowered you to start, or this live empowers you to start really thinking about your SOPs. We're in the first quarter of the year. Now is time to start thinking about those things because you will be happy. Your future self will be happy. Your team and your future team that you acquire will definitely be happy. And it's a starting point. It's not to say that this is like set in stone and it's like cemented in. They're meant to grow with you. And it's okay if what you have today doesn't even match it in 6 months. It's okay because that means that you've grown a little bit. If you're a firm and you're really struggling with trying to figure out where to start, please feel free to get in contact with me. Me and my team, we love conducting system audits. That's usually how we're able to navigate what exactly the firm needs and help identify the SOPs that are at issue that need to be worked through. So get in touch with us, simpson-aso.com. We have a contact form that you can fill out on the website, and you can even give us a call and we'll speak with you and try to help you schedule time to meet with me so that we can talk about your systems and things like that. Or you could even find us on YouTube. It is Cass Loves Tech on YouTube, and we're also on all the other socials. I love LinkedIn, so I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and we're also on Instagram and Facebook as well. So get in touch with us, and we'd love to help you navigate your pain points of your systems and help you automate a few things. So get in touch with us, and we'll assist you.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Casita, for a great chat. I always learn a lot and enjoy talking with you. We'll definitely do this again. And I hope everyone out there has a great Friday and a great weekend.
Yes, I really do hope everyone has a great weekend. And no need to thank me. I enjoy being here. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I enjoy these jam sessions. I know we're taking a little bit of time out of people's day to watch this, but I love them. They're so informative. And I feel like when people are informed, they're empowered to make changes that will impact their business and their lives, essentially. So we'll see you guys in the next live video. And I hope that you found what we've been talking about super duper helpful.
Awesome. All right. See you, everyone.
Bye. All right, legal masterminds. As I said in the video, I hope that you found this jam session helpful and it has empowered you to make changes in your standard operating procedures. Or if you don't have standard operating procedures, that this has equipped you to get started on creating standard operating procedures for your legal practice. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel so that you can stay informed on the videos added to the channel. Until next time, continue thriving with your systems and have an amazing day.